later today. There's our course outline and our objectives for those of you who are getting CEUs. All right, so just a little bit of a review. We called that early stage, the early stages of the disease, a time of normalization, where we want to keep things as normal as possible. We're going to come alongside and we're going to assist, give cues, reminders, maybe even write some notes. But that time is normalization. We want our loved one to be able to do as much for themselves for as long as possible with dignity as well. We don't want to jump in and do too much too soon, because as we talked about, that can cause or create a challenging expression. So we're using the word expression instead of behavior, because they're doing the best that they can with what remains. And when we use that word behavior, it sounds really, really harsh. So we've been kind of switching over and using the word expression. They're doing the best they can. In those middle stages of the disease, we're calling that the supportive stages. Now they're needing help with just about everything, but they can still do an awful lot, but they're needing help. We might have to get an activity started for them, but then that muscle memory kicks in and they can still brush their teeth, feed themselves, get dressed, play a game, whatever it is. It's a supportive stage. Now we're going to talk about the late stage. Sometimes it's called the severe stage or the end stages of the disease. During this time, this is where we're going to find that our loved ones, our clients, our residents need that maximum help. It's not just them that needs the maximum amount of help, it's also us during this time. They very likely during this time will become total care, where they're going to be a total care with all of their ADLs, those activities of daily living, bathing and grooming, eating and toileting, those type of things. But what we want to focus on, and this is throughout the course of the disease, we want to focus on what remains. We want to focus on what remains. We can't focus on what is lost. So what we are saying here at the bottom of the screen, matching and maximizing their abilities and skills, and most definitely realizing they are still present. And we're going to watch a couple of videos during this hour that I hope will really help you understand what's actually going on at the brain, in the brain at this stage of the disease. Typically by this stage of the disease, now keep in mind, you and I, we have what's called a normal 3-pound brain. A normal brain weighs about 3 pounds. By the time a person with dementia, any of the dementias, over 100, 130 different types of dementia, by the time they get to this stage, that brain's getting close to 1 pound. It's gone from 3 pounds to 1 pound. Now, one of the things we can remind ourselves of is, how can we expect them to act like a person with a 3-pound brain, when regardless of what type of dementia they have, their brain is failing? We have to keep that in mind as well. So let's look at this wheel. It's called a wellness wheel. And when we think about life enrichment throughout the stages of the disease, we want to make sure that we're not, there are some good things about being entertained. There are some good things about being busy. That's not all bad at all. That's very, very needed. We need that as well. That time to be entertained, that time to be busy, so that we aren't bored. If we get bored, however, or if we're not sure what to do, we have a functioning 3-pound brain that can still make executive decisions. And we would go and do something productive or not, but it wouldn't look like a challenging expression or a challenging behavior. We want to do as many activities or participate in things with our loved ones that are enriching. We also want to think about what this activity is bringing to their life. So if we can kind of root our activities in these domains and look at each of them there's occupational, spiritual, intellectual, I'm having to read upside down, physical, emotional, environmental, and social. When we focus on these areas, and we're actually going to break it down when we start talking about some activities that we can continue to do with our loved ones, our clients, or our residents, we're going to break them down into those categories. But bringing purpose, that sense of accomplishment, success, and enjoyment, making sure we're keeping a connection now more than ever. At this stage of the disease, now more than ever, we need to make the connections. We're going to talk about some ways to keep and to continue those connections or to create them. And it's so much more than staying busy or being entertained. When I mentioned the word connections, I want you to think about something, because we're getting ready in the next couple of slides to look at something called the theory of rhetorogenesis. And I want you to think about a very young child, let's say before the age of 5 or maybe 3. If they are hurt, scared, sad, upset, what do we do to bring them comfort? We hold them, we touch them, we pat, we rock, we assure. We tend to stop doing that with adults. And as we're going to see when we look at the theory of rhetorogenesis in just a minute, this is the time they need it more than ever. To assure them that they're not alone, to assure them that we are there, that they are safe. Touch. And if we call that compassionate touch, and how we go about doing it, and the way that some of our activities we're going to do maybe at this end stage of the disease is going to look a little bit different than it looked earlier. So kind of keep that in mind. We do want to try to stay person-centered. Having that sense of well-being is important throughout our lives. I'm going to talk about next month or later this month, whenever we are doing the holidays and dementia. So what can we do with our loved one during the holidays? Because you know what we tend to do, and I'm guilty of this as well, and had to really learn a lesson. We tend to say things to our loved ones like, go ahead and sit down over there and watch your show. I've got it. We don't need your help in the kitchen. You go over there. In other words, get out of the way. And what they may hear is that I'm not needed, I'm not wanted, I won't do it right. So what can we do to include them, regardless of what stage they're in? And in the holidays and dementia, we will actually go through some things that you can do to include your loved one in the festivities of the holidays, so that they don't feel like they're just being asked to go in there and watch their show. Now, if that's what they want to do, that's fine. But we need to have some ideas. We need to have some plans of how to include them so that they have that sense of belonging and well-being and being needed. We do want to continue throughout the course of the disease to maximize their independence and their dignity as much as possible. And again, we want to focus on their current skills, not their prior skills. Because think about what happens to us if we get bogged down into thinking about the past. That's something called depression. Whenever we kind of land in the past and we stay there and we ruminate over and over and over again, that can really start to bring on some depression in us, because all we're doing is staying in the they can't. They used to be able to, last year they could. Focus, cognitive behavior therapy with ourselves, focus over to what remains. How do I reframe this? What can they still do, even if I have to change it up a little bit? So matching the activity to the ability and preference, and then put in bold print this last bullet point. Recognize that environmental influences affect persons living with dementia. Studies and statistics will show us that about 80% of the time, those challenging behaviors or challenging expressions that our loved ones have are caused from the way we present it, or our face, or our tone, or our gestures, because they're still able to read us all the way till end of life. You may be going, well, how do we know that? We know that because their amygdala remains intact throughout the course of this disease. Their hippocampus is going away, their hippocampus that holds facts. But their amygdala, which holds emotions and feelings, remains intact. They are very much there. Even if their face can't express emotions and feelings anymore, because the part of the brain that tells the face to show emotions and feelings is completely separate from the part of the brain that actually feels emotions and feelings, if that makes sense. I mentioned the theory of rhetorogenesis, and you're going to get a copy of this because I know that you're going to want to see it up close, and this is not going to be a good way to look at it because the print is tiny. Some of you who've been on our programs or who are part of our support group have seen this before because we use it pretty often. And is it perfect? Absolutely not. It is not perfect. But is it a tool that we can use? It is a tool that we can use. Some of you may have also heard of the FAST scale or the FAST stages. Some physicians use the FAST stages where they use 7 stages of the disease rather than 3. Most places, the Alzheimer's Association, we do, many doctors' offices use 3 stages, the early, the moderate, and the late. But some of them use this FAST scale. So what this is telling us is where their abilities are parallel to a developmental age. So for example, let's say we tell a 5-year-old to go and put their clothes on. And that's all we say. Just go put your clothes on, go get dressed. And they come back out and they have on their princess dress and their cowboy boots. And maybe she's not matching at all, but is she dressed? Absolutely. So if we tell our loved one who falls under where it says approximate developmental age, and we go down 5 to 7 years, that's number 5, and we just say something along the lines of go get dressed, and they come out with their underwear on over their pants, or with 3 pairs of sweatpants on, or multiple shirts, or clothing that's inappropriate for the season, or 2 different shoes on. You see where this lines up. They're dressed. And that's all we said was go get dressed. Another example, if you can see down where it says moderate and it says 6, and then it says A, B, C, D. If our loved one fell into maybe that 6D, which shows that's about a 3 to 4-year-old. When a 3 or 4-year-old feels like they're being mistreated, or sometimes when they don't understand what we're trying to say to them, they're not quite getting the point, or they don't want to do what they're asking them to do, well, how do they respond? They may have a verbal or a physical outburst if they are 2, 3, 4 years old. All right, now think about our loved ones or person with dementia who has that verbal or that physical outburst. Think about why. Theory of rhetorogenesis is going back, not fully understanding what you're asking me to do, but my executive functioning up here is gone. So I'm going to use what remains, my outburst and maybe temper. But I know some curse words or some sex talk or some racial slurs that might come out because they stored over here on the right, and they may remain well into the disease, even if they never used them before. And so we may see what looks like a temper tantrum, but we have to think about why is that happening? I encourage you to keep a notebook, keep a journal. If you're starting to see patterns of these challenging expressions, challenging behaviors, because you may very well find a pattern. Oh my goodness, this is happening every day at 3 o'clock after a certain show on TV, after a certain something that I'm doing, whatever it is, you may very well be able to find a pattern as to why your loved one is doing something that they're doing that might be challenging. Let's also look at some other common changes that we may see in somebody who's in the late stages of dementia. At this stage, they are typically going to need round-the-clock care and will not be able to be left alone. Because like I said earlier, they're very likely going to be total care as far as those ADLs, activities of daily living. Their language is probably going to come down to 10 words or less. And there's going to be a lot of word salad, and there's going to be a lot of what might sound like babbling. Again, if you think about that theory of rhetorogenesis, think of how we learn to talk. We start with da 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 ba 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 ba. And those are the very sounds they'll go back to. Think about that. See it all day long. But there's a word that tends to stay for almost everybody. I bet you can think of what it is. No. That word's pretty easy to say. No, no, no. We learned it pretty early because we were told no pretty early. And no stays. And sometimes they'll use no when they mean yes, because they have the word no and they don't have the word yes. We'll talk more about that later. They're going to have a really hard time understanding what we're saying to them. So think about this, the communication centers in the brain. If they can't get the words out, they don't understand the words coming in. But we can still communicate. We just have to communicate in a different way. We wouldn't look down at a very small child and use great big long words and sentences. We bring those down. We might leave out some adjectives and some adverbs, and we bring it down to a much simpler speech. We also are going to start using more hand motions and gestures. Like I said earlier, amygdala is intact. They're going to be able to read our tone, our hand gestures, and they'll be able to follow or mirror many of the things that we do. They are going to start to rely, this is a sensory time, a lot on touch, their feelings, those sensations. All of their senses remain intact, but they change. They change. And you may remember from some of our other programs, they're losing that taste, except for sweet. Sweet really remains. Hearing changes, but they can still hear. We know they can hear all the way till the end of life. We know that. I can tell you that for certain. They hear all the way till end of life. Their vision changes, and at the end of the disease, toward the late stages of the disease, vision gets down to like a monocle. We're not seeing anything right here, but I've almost got tunnel vision. And they'll rarely move their neck, but they might move their whole body. So we've got to get in their line of vision. They will not be able to complete a two-stage command, but they can probably still do a one-step command with just a couple of words. They're also going to go into a time of repetitiveness, and we're going to watch a video about repetitiveness. I want you to think about what repetitiveness is and why we do it. Go back to a young child. What do we do with those babies? We rock and we pat for comfort. Some of you may be self-soothing right now. If you rock, I'm a rocker. I sit and rock all the time. If you've got a pen that you're, if your foot's going up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. If you're someone that when you're listening to a program, oh, I used to have a little toy here that I would sit and just kind of do on my hands when I'm listening to a program. You're self-soothing. You're doing it yourself. But nobody's calling that a behavior. But when we see it in our loved ones, sometimes we do. because it might look more like where they're hitting on or patting on. And again, we're going to see a video about this in just a little bit. There's a loss of the ability to control movement. So we may see rigid muscles, increasing reflexes, and both their gross motor skills and their fine motor skills at this time are going to be affected. One of the things that's going to remain is grip. Think about that again with a young child. With a little bitty, with a newborn, we can put our finger in their hand, and what do? They grip. And that kind of strength remains. They are going to respond more to things that stimulate their senses. So they're going to respond to sight and hearing and smell and touch and taste. We're actually going to look at some things that you can do, some products even that you can buy or make yourself that's going to help you in this area. And I've got a video on this as well. Again, they're going to be able to understand that nonverbal communication better than verbal communication. Got lots of folks still coming in. Sorry, I'm letting them in. They can still connect with nature. They can still many times have automatic social chit chat. What this means, even if a person is to the stage where they are and that's all that they have, that's what remains, you can still talk to them. You can have a complete conversation with them. Tell me more. Really? Oh my goodness, what in the world happened then? And they will go back and forth, back. They're having social chit chat. It remains. Listen for the inflection in their voice. It remains. Rhythmic language remains. Music is very important in this stage, in all stages, but especially their music is important. Their music set from the time they were 10 to 25. Prayers are rhythmic. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be. Poetry is rhythmic. ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, nursery rhymes, poetry, anything that is rhythmic may remain. I mentioned earlier about that word no, staying, but sometimes they will use the word no when they mean yes. So if we say, are you hungry? No. Would you like something to eat? No. But then we put it in their hand and they'll put it in their mouth. Because they hear that it's a question because of the inflection in our voice, and they may not have the word yes anymore, and they'll use no. They may not know what they're agreeing to. They may not know exactly what they're saying, even with a head nod, because we can lead them a lot at this stage. If I'm smiling and shaking my head, many times they will shake their head too. And this is where some people really don't understand the disease. And maybe someone who's not around a lot will come to visit and go, well, they seem pretty good. They followed everything I said. They were agreed. We had a great conversation. I asked them, what'd you think about that weather? That weather's really, and they smiled and they nodded. Well, I gave them the answer because I'm smiling and nodding right at them. Boy, those Cowboys, they didn't have a very good game, did they? No. Because they'll mimic or they will mirror. They're going to develop a time during this time where they have what's called a flat facial affect. You can also find it called a stony appearance, where they're flat like stone. And again, like I said earlier, it's where the part of the brain that tells the face to have expressions on it may be gone, may no longer exist, may be damaged. But that part of the brain that feels the feelings is still very much there. So best practices for late stages. We've already touched on several of these. You can use yes/no questions, but then watch their full body language. Watch their body language. Using touch, sight, sound, smells, and taste, and we're about to jump into how to do that. Be aware of the environment, knowing that the environment can be very influential on how they react or respond to us. We're going to use lots of visual cues and demonstrations in a really slow, one step at a time manner. Using touch. Can't say that enough. We'll talk more about touch as we go, and we want to make sure that we go very, very slow. It can take up to 20 full seconds, and listen to 20 full seconds for them to hear, process, and do. And you know what we are doing after about 5 seconds? We're saying it again. Because 20 seconds is a long time. They have to process. I've watched people fall, hit their face, and then put their hands out after they're already laying on the ground. Because by the time their brain realized I'm falling, I need to stop this fall, they were already on the ground. Don't talk about them like they're not there. Don't talk over them, and don't pull away. Don't pull away during this time. Now let's start looking at the why and some of the things that we can do. There's a therapy called snoozeland. And in some places, some facilities or centers, they even have what's called snoozeland rooms. What it is it's multi-sensory stimulation is what it is. It's an actual type of therapy, and it uses light, sound, sense, and music to help people relax, but it can also be stimulating. There was a study done that found that even 15 to 30 minutes of a snoozeland room decreased restlessness and the tendency to wander. We have something here that we call our namaste room, and we do something very, very similar. You don't have to go out and buy all of the stuff that you're going to see in this video. You'll be able to create some of this. But there are places to buy it, and I'm going to give you that at the very end. I'm going to tell you where you can go and get some of this. So I want us to watch this short video. It's less than 2 minutes to help you understand what a snoozeland room is and what multi-sensory stimulation actually looks like. And then we're going to talk about the difference in the amygdala and the hippocampus and what's happening in the brain of someone who's later in the disease, so that we can then start choosing activities to do with them. I want you to watch this first.
Snoozeland is it is a relaxation program. That's certainly a huge benefit of it. So somebody that perhaps is agitated or overstimulated, it's something that they can go in, they can look at the bubble tube, the different colors. For others, it can be very stimulating that people want to come in and they're really exploring the environment. And that's actually what snoozeland means. It means to relax and to explore. That's what that word means. When people come into a hospital, as much as we try to give them, and we try to give them as much as we can because we care for them, but they lose so much. They lose the ability to have that independence. They might have lost their house and their car, and there's so many things that they no longer have control of. So when we get them in this program, it's really about them having control. I think definitely they do like the big bubble tube. It's just kind of interesting. And when they see this big, huge cart coming and we plug it in, it's quite exciting for them. And they're able to change the colors, which is kind of neat. They also like the fiber optic cables, and they change color as well. And they can touch them and feel them and divide them. Sometimes they braid them. They can do all sorts of things with that. It doesn't matter where a person is cognitively. I think that everybody has potential, especially that potential to enjoy life.
Really interesting. And to see it in action is very interesting. And again, you may have looked at that and thought, what? But what you'll find is that people will get in these snoozeland rooms, namaste rooms, or even something you're doing at home, and they may sit and look at that bubble tube for an hour. and we do not need to disturb them. That's not something you or I would want to do. Maybe, or maybe we would. We have a 3-pound brain. If they have that 1-pound brain, and that is bringing them comfort, that is bringing them relaxation, we don't need to put a time limit on it. Just because it's not something we would do. That behavior, that expression is normal for them at this stage of the disease. Don't put time limits on it. Time is held up here, and time does not mean the same thing anymore. We also don't want to have them get busy or doing some of these activities that we're talking about and then go, oh, it's 5 o'clock, time to eat, stop. You may cause a challenging behavior or a challenging expression because they are in the middle. They are so involved in that bubble tube light. They're similar to a lava lamp. This next one we're going to look at, she gives the best example, especially as we're talking about late stage dementia, as to what's happening to the brain, the difference in what's happening with the hippocampus and the amygdala. She uses a bookcase analogy. So let's watch this one next.
Hi, I'd like to explain dementia to you in the way that it was explained to me. I'd like to picture that I'm an 80-year-old woman standing here, and that beside me there is a bookcase that's as tall as I am and is filled with books. Now, each of those books represents a fact or a date or a number or a memory that I've gained in the last 80 years of my life. So right at the top, my most recent memory, so what I had for breakfast, getting dressed this morning. The next shelf down might be things that are a little bit less recent. So maybe my last holiday, what I did at Christmas, maybe the last time you came to visit me. The next shelf down by my shoulders will be my 70s, my 60s, my 50s. My 20s will be down by my knees, and my childhood memories will be all the way down by my feet. So that is the bookcase that makes up me. Now, when I get hit by dementia, what's going to happen is that my bookcase is going to start to rock. And I'm going to start losing those books, starting from the ones on the top, which may explain why my short-term memory is likely to be affected first. So as my dementia progresses, I might find myself having lost not only the top shelf, but the next one down and the next. I might find myself living in the 1950s. Now, embrace my reality. I go into my kitchen today to make myself a cup of tea. What do you think? Given that I'm expecting a 1950s kitchen, what's a likely accident that I might have? If you thought putting an electric kettle on a hob, that's absolutely right. Now, as my carer, as my relative, you might be tempted to say, we shouldn't let her make tea anymore, that's really dangerous. But there is a simpler solution, which might be to just change my kettle from an electric one to a whistling kettle, because that's what I'm expecting, and I know how to use that. And I learned how to use a whistling kettle all the way down in my childhood, so that memory is likely to stay with me a lot longer. That's not going to help everybody with dementia, but it might help me at this particular stage. Now, I talked about this one bookcase that's got all these facts and memories and numbers, and that's quite a flimsy bookcase, and when that gets hit by dementia, it rocks a lot. Now, this bookcase is representing a part of my brain called the hippocampus, which is more susceptible to dementia. However, my feelings and my emotions, the things that make me who I am and the reasons why you love me, they're all managed separately by a different part of the brain called the amygdala. And that's all here in a separate bookcase. It's a really strong oak bookcase. When that gets hit by dementia, it's not going to move very much. Let me explain to you how the two bookcases work together. So when I was a child, I had a teacher. He's on the hippocampus bookcase. He was incredibly inspiring. And the way that he made me feel, inspired, in awe, that is stored in a separate book on my amygdala bookcase. So the teacher is on the hippocampus, but the way I felt, that's going to be managed by the amygdala. Now let's bring it back to today, where I'm the 80-year-old woman. I have dementia. You come to visit me. That's a fact. That happens here. And we have a blazing row. I'm probably going to feel upset, sad, angry, and that's going to go onto the amygdala in a book here. You might go away thinking, it doesn't really matter. She'll forget that I even came to visit, let alone that we had a row. And you know what? You're probably right. That book will probably go. But what's likely to stay with me are those feelings, those emotions, that anger, and with nothing to relate it to, it might be really confusing for me. But let me leave you with a positive example. Say you come to visit me and you take me out to the seaside and we have a great time. So here it is, the seaside, the waves, the great time, the feelings of safety and happiness and love that I feel are held over here in the amygdala. As soon as we get back to my house, I've forgotten where we've been. That book is gone. And you might think, oh, it's just not worth it. Why do I bother? I don't think I'm going to carry on visiting her. But look over here. Those feelings, that safety, that warmth, that's going to stay with me for a lot longer. So I would like to encourage you to continue to visit and to care for the people that you know, relatives, friends who have dementia, and to remember that there is more to the person than the dementia. Thank you.
That is such a great demonstration, and it's so easy to remember the bookcases. And if you want to use that video to teach or to show family members, go to YouTube and type in bookcase analogy dementia, and it comes up. But doesn't that help us understand? So we want to look at these 4 different levels of activities: purposeful, productive activities, fun, leisure, self-care, wellness, and restful, restorative. So let's start with in the late stage. And again, not everybody's going to be able to do all of these. Some purposeful, productive, sensory focused activities. If they are still able to fold laundry, socks, or towels, if they're still able to fold them, absolutely, let's fold this laundry. They may just be able to sort, or they may just move things around, but they're helping you while you are folding. Cleaning things, wiping down, that's a repetitive motion. They may clean the same spot for a long time, but boy, are they helping you. Sorting, and then caring for pets, dolls, or plants. And many times this is not a real pet. It's the pet that you see there on the screen on the left. Those are robotic dogs and robotic cats that are made specifically for people with dementia. These are not the fur real pets that you buy at Walmart. And I'm going to give you a website where you can go and find these. And what I'm going to encourage you to do is go to these websites and look at them and then shop around. You may be able to find them on Amazon. If you do use dolls at this time, I encourage you to use something that looks like a real baby. Many people, men and women, will hold baby dolls. We typically don't use dolls until we are further along into the disease. I use real children. It's called intergenerational therapy. I have never had anyone at any stage of the disease do anything with a baby other than love and hold on a real baby. As young as 3 months old, I've got pictures in my office of residents holding babies. But get the weighted baby doll that actually feels like a baby and looks like a baby if you do choose to use those. Some other types of activities we might do that has to do with music and rhythm, dancing, and we can dance in a chair. And again, even if they might have that flat affect, but we're holding their hands and we're moving them around, if they're not resistant or pulling back from it, they're probably really liking doing it. Or patting, singing, humming. Musical instruments become very important. Tambourines and maracas, because you can do a beat. We do music therapy with our residents here all the way through this disease. And we do lots of drum therapy, and we've got drumsticks and we're beating on those big balls that look like exercise balls. That's fun. Rhythmic. Visiting, looking at pictures, ruminating, but not asking them questions. You're telling them their story. making books of their story, and you're reading them or telling them their story. Watching a live entertainer, looking at the bubble lamps or the lava lamps, fish tanks, also real, or you can buy fish tanks that don't have real fish in them. I'll show you where to get those. Fresh flowers, being able to handle, hold, and smell fresh flowers, maybe watching a sports program, watching the World Series, keeping in mind what their attention span might be. And then short episodes of TV where you might want to go to YouTube and just pull off Andy Griffith, but you're just going to watch, maybe do something that's like the best of Barney, and they'll only be 5 to 10 minutes. They'll be short videos. Nature shows are good also, or things with pets. Physical. Now we're talking about exercise, but they may not be able to do it themselves. But like you see in the picture, range of motion exercises. They're going to go in and out of physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy throughout the course of the disease, stretching, possibly walking and standing or transferring, personal care task, occupational therapy helps with that, and even massage. Cognitively, you see the gentleman who has what's called, sometimes they'll call a busy board or a busy mat. He's got like a lap blanket that has ties, snaps, zippers, different types of felt, velvet, so that he can touch the different types of fabric. That's called a sensory quilt or a lap mat. Fidget cuffs. And again, I'm going to show you where to get these. And then reading aloud to them. One of the things I used to be asked to do all the time when I was a volunteer with hospice was to read the Bible to people. And they loved it. Restful, restorative, and sensory activities. Again, there's the worship service. You can pull up, most every church now records their sermons or their programs. And we can pull up and listen to choir singing. There's Bible apps where we can listen to scripture being read. Again, holding or stroking an animal, fabric, that compassionate touch, that soft touch with a massage. You heard Jamie say earlier, we're actually doing a 1-hour compassionate touch training later this month. I encourage you to be part of that. Being outside and just sitting in the sun, or being outside, period. Using aromatherapy with a diffuser, listening to quiet music, taking a nap. And a person at the end stage of the disease is going to start to sleep more. In fact, they're going to sleep almost 20 hours a day as they near the end of the disease. This gives you an example of how to do mealtime for people at all stages of the disease. So earlier in the disease, the middle stage of the disease, and the late stage of the disease. Earlier in the disease, they may actually be able to do some of the cooking with us just kind of keeping them straight through the steps. The mid stage of the disease, they may still be able to stir, roll the dough, set the table. In the late stage of the disease, we're eating, we're smelling, we're touching. This particular video, I'm going to skip for right now. If I have time, I'm going to come back to it. If not, you'll be sent that link because she's kind of going to do an overall summary of activities with dementia, but I'm going to skip that right now. Okay, creating a life story. This is where you're creating a memory box. For those who are in the late stages of the disease, you're actually going to use their items. So if they had a toolkit, or if they had a sewing kit, I encourage families to use their toolkit, use their sewing kit, but you go through there and you decide what you're putting in it. You can also create these boxes of memories. It's called a memory box. Now, you might not want to put original photos in there. You go and make photos just in case they get ruined or torn. Or something from their past, something that they're going to be able to connect to. They might not be able to tell you the story, but again, this is where you're telling them their story. Some people call them a legacy box as well. Another thing that we might want to do, and this is so important at this stage of the disease, is just be. We're the ones that have a hard time with that. When I have students come through here at the West Center, they have the hardest time with learning how to just be, just sit, hold hands, palm to palm, maybe rocking, humming, listening to music for 45 minutes. We're not on the phone. We're not looking at the TV. I have had students write papers on what a fantastic experience it was for them and the connection they felt like they made with residents, just being with them. That's a connection. Sometimes that's all they need at this stage is the connection. We are the ones that get to wanting to fill the time with stuff or conversation, and they don't need it anymore. They just need us to be. They just need us to be there. What if they don't respond though? What if they have that flat affect or they're expressionless? You heard her in the video. Unless they're pulling away, unless they're grimacing or have a furrowed brow, trust that that feeling is there and that you are making a connection. I'm going to show you a very powerful video about someone in the late stage of the disease. This particular woman, some people had given up on her. There were caregivers who even didn't want to work with her anymore because they said she hit. And she's not hitting, she's being repetitive. And you're going to see what's called validation therapy being used to break through to someone in the late stage of the disease.
People are very old and deteriorated, and no one enters their world, and they're just sitting there. They will withdraw inward more and more. And their desperate need for connection is all now inside. And if a person is all alone, even if they're very, very deteriorated, there's a longing for this kind of closeness. Mrs. Wilson, hello. You want me to sit? Can you see me good? Gladys Wilson is a wonderful example of a person who is in the phase of repetitive motion, where people use movements, repetitive movements, because they don't have any more speech or very little speech, but they have human needs that need to be expressed. You're crying. Crying, you have a tear right here in your face. You have a little pain. You don't want me to touch you. You're very sad. Can you see me? Is it scary? Are you afraid? And if this person sits with their eyes closed, rocking back and forth, and maybe there's a tear coming down, there's a need there. There's a little tear that's coming out. You feel it? You feel a little tear? If you gently use touch, and I touched Gladys Wilson for the fingertips right here on the cheek, is where the mother usually touches a child. If you touch an infant there, it looks up, and every cell remembers where it was touched by the mother. And often that person knows, even if they can't say a word at that moment, they won't talk, or they don't want to talk, but there's a communication. And that person is no longer alone. Can you let me in a little bit? You think? Just a little? You think I could be with you in Jesus for a minute? Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. I use music, because when speech is gone, music, especially with Gladys Wilson, it was religious music, because there's emotion tied to it and safety tied to it. So I used her old church song, Jesus loves me, yes, Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me. The Bible tells me so. What I did was, when she moved, I moved with her. And when I was singing, because she didn't sing with me, so I matched the intensity of my voice to the intensity of her movement. And pretty soon, for a split second, we became one person. Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me. The Bible tells me so. But at one point, when she got very quiet and very peaceful, and my voice became very quiet as hers and very peaceful, and my breathing slowed to her breathing, she pulled me to her, and I moved with her. And for her at that moment, I believe I was a symbol of her mom. You'll say more. Yeah. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the mothers and the fathers. He's the breakthrough doesn't happen every time. The person will not always open their eyes and look at you. But if you keep trying and you keep centering yourself and really look at that person and really mirror their movements, maybe not this time, but the next time you come, you'll have a communication. You'll say it with Jesus and me.
Oh, powerful. She has a flat affect, but she is still very much there. But you see why some of the staff didn't want to work with her. She hits. She wasn't hitting. She was self-soothing. She was in that stage of rhythmic motion. So there's very much life still to be had. These are the places that I told you about. These are the resources. ssww.com is SNS worldwide, and then allstore.com. They have some fantastic items that you can get throughout the course of the disease. When you go to SSWW, type dementia in the search, and it will pull up many of the things that you see here, from the early to the middle to the late stages of the disease. They've got some of those robotic pets as well. And again, I encourage you to go on there, find the item, and then you might find it cheaper over on Amazon. I hope that you're seeing a theme in what we've been talking about. Knowing and understanding the disease and what to expect is important to provide the right care. Including best ways to communicate and how to communicate plays into their behavioral expressions. And this is a non-pharmacological intervention, is doing activities with our loved ones. This also is education for you. And again, we encourage you to share these slides and to share the video whenever you get it later this afternoon. Here's our information again at the West Center, mine and Jamie's. If you ever have any questions, you can email us or you can call us. Oh, right on time. We did a good job getting finished there. So I appreciate everybody's time and attention today. We are right at 12:30. You'll get the link to do the survey later today. You'll also get all the slides, and you will get, we didn't go back to that one video. It was an overview of activities, but you're going to get a link to it in the email. I appreciate you being here. We will be doing our support group at 1 o'clock today. Those of you who are going to get on there, or if you need the link, you can send. Thank you. See y'all later.